Hey, everyone, got a great guest that many of you probably already know, but if you don't, Brian Fink, I think, is one of the guys in the space that I'd say certainly doesn't mind about telling his thoughts about what's happening in recruiting space and TA. And that's what we're going to jump into today. Brian, will you give a quick intro if someone doesn't know you, which I think is going to be odd, but tell us about you and how you even got into recruiting.
Okay. Hey, I'm Brian Fink. I'm 5'10". I'm 260 pounds. I am Maddie's dad. I'm married to Allie, but I don't think those are the factoids that you guys are looking for today. I am a recruiter, headhunter, whatever you want to call it these days, because I often hear it being referred to as a talent engineer, which I think is a little far-fetched, but we'll probably get into that in a little bit. I am the managing principal at the Rework Group. We focus on working with companies that are 50 to 500 employees to help them grow their executive bench when it comes time for them to surge. Prior to that, I was at McAfee, Twitter, Apple, AWS. I've got the Thing DNA, so to speak. And I'm excited to help recruiters go further and faster and really take on this new challenging world. I think that your audience probably knows me because I show up on webinars quite a bit because I am passionate like those that I stand on their shoulders, like a Shane Pritchett or Steve Levy, that I've really that I've benefited strongly from the open source community, if you will, when it comes to sharing recruiting knowledge.
And that's why I actually created this podcast because there aren't, I'd say, of all the, and you've been in this space going to conferences and stuff. I was talking to Chad and Cheese a couple years ago. I'm like, why don't you guys get into more like HR? Because they still have a huge part of recruiting in smaller businesses and whatnot, but it's not their wheelhouse. It's a different vibe. So my intent was, how do we get the knowledge of people who are showing up at the conferences? Because HR, and there's a lot of recruiters that don't get to conferences. How do we
No,
get that mindset to them? And so that was my whole purpose, was get the leaders who know this stuff and are talking about it, get them to talk about it. So that's what I wanted to do. And thanks for being on the show to dive in, because it's all about giving back at this point for you and me and many of us who have stood on like Jerry's shoulders for years.
I don't think that I think there are two types of recruiters that exist in the world, and those are the ones that are curious recruiters and the ones who are not. The curious recruiter is going to continue to build things and pass that knowledge down. The not so curious recruiter, they're going to try to build a moat and try to create this impenetrable fortress where people can't come in. And when you do that, you also make it where you can't come out and learn other things. So just my 2 cents on, like you said, Jerry Crispin, Steve Levy, Steve Rath, Michael Goldberg. I can just go down the list, Katrina Kibben, all these people who have been instrumental in building our community. And I hope that somewhere, somehow, I'll rank on that list someday.
I think you're getting in there pretty quick, buddy. Hey, so let's jump in. So we talked the other day real quick about the new stack or non-stack of talent acquisition tools. And one of the other things I like to point out in these calls too is there are so many different types of recruiting, from small business where you have limited tools to enterprise where you can just pick and pull and you have tons of structures and stuff. So when we talk about different things, I want to keep that in mind, because somebody's trying to recruit, they're a single recruiter, maybe they're HR and doing recruiting. What their ability to pull off the shelf and do is going to be a little bit more limited than somebody like Shally, who can just pull a ton of tech stuff together.
Yeah.
We'll always keep that in mind when we're talking about, hey, here's a big sourcing tool, and realize some of the people on here might not even know what that is, but we'll try to keep it high level and segment that kind of stuff if we can.
Actually, maybe I want to go simplistic. Is that,
Uh-huh.
Jonathan, you and I the other afternoon, we were talking about a comment that somebody had made on LinkedIn about the stackless tech stack. And I really think that it's a useful frame where people can, whether you're a single operator in HR or you're in an enterprise, I think that we need to look at the fact that all companies have stripped away, they have the ability to strip away dedicated HR platforms and replace them with AI, spreadsheets, improvisation, that curiosity, that curious angle. The pitch I'm going for, I think, is relatively simple, is for most of the last 2 decades. And this is one of the reasons why I didn't go to some major conferences this week. I think that HR teams have bought a stack and they talk about what is your tech stack and what is your ATS and what is your CRM and what is your HRS and what's your performance management tool? What's your employee engagement tool? What's your learning or your LMS system? Each tool as a vendor, a contract, an admin, a renewal conversion or success rate that nobody looks forward to. The stack is the operating system of the people function. What's happening now, and I hope that a lot of vendors are not delusional about this, is that the tech stack is collapsing. It's not because the problems went away, right? Like you and I were talking at the pre-call about the fact that Charney made a tweet that the problem is not finding more people. It's what you do when you find the people, right?
Yep.
This is an instance where because AI can now handle the workflow layer, this is a business where tech vendors are going to have to move into the API business. Most of those tools that were solving problems, dude, they don't need to exist anymore. You don't need a $40,000 ATS license to parse resumes and to score candidates. You need a good prompt and a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet is everlasting, right? That is what all recruiters are working on. You don't
Yep.
need a performance platform to run a calibration cycle. You need a structured doc that somebody can use who can run a meeting. What I think the irony is that, like I said, all these people met up in Vegas with a lot of vendors. And the irony is that companies are going stackless because they feel that it actually has more sophistication than these legacy tools. If you go to Claude, and I'm a big Claude head,
I am too.
you can plug in skills, you can work in projects, you can build all these different sourcing, screening, drafting, summarization components. You can plug in an API to Notion or an Airtable spreadsheet for pipeline tracking, for headcount, for notes. And then you can use Notion to record the conversation. And therefore you can use that as a calibration call or as a shared review, or you can use Loom or YouTube or Substack to do an on-demand learning with no admin layer. Okay, so everything I've just replaced is I've replaced on the ATS side, I replaced Greenhouse and Lever. I got rid of Workday, Bamboo. I've gotten rid of Culture Amp 15.5. I've gotten rid of Cornerstone. I've gotten rid of SIBO. I've gotten rid of Qualtrics. I've just taken you from $800,000 in spend to $40,000 in spend.
Yep. With one person who can pull it all together and modify it as your systems change and your requirements.
Absolutely. And what I would say is that I don't know if CTOs are listening to this conversation, but they need to be aware of it because in many instances, there's technology that's purchased that the CTOs left out of the conversation and it's driven by the heads of recruiting. I think that we're seeing Stackless in the sales organizations. There are a lot of different venues as to how this plays out.
Yeah. And that, let me clarify for some people who don't understand from the technical side what we're talking about. And if you're not playing with tools and experimenting with even free stuff with Claude, just get on it or look for a new job at this point. And I'll be totally honest about it. If you're not inquiring into what your job's going to look like and how to be better at a recruiter or in HR in recruiting, this world is not going to be for you.
I want to double click on that. I don't necessarily think people need to get out of it. I would prefer that they do rather than hurt themselves, but they've got to be curious and they've got to experiment. You're absolutely correct, JD, is that this bifurcates the market into two very different futures for recruiters. One that is shrinking fast, the person who is like the ostrich who has their head in the sand, or the one that has real runway that is using AI as jet fuel. Yeah, I just think that there's a clear bifurcation there.
Yeah. And there's the gray area where people who are experimenting and getting into it, and that's fine, but you also have to listen to podcasts like this, listen to guys like Brian who are doing this stuff and talking about it, because there are tools out there that you can't use or you're using them the wrong way. Like you can't just get a screening system and saying, wow, it found all these great candidates. If you don't know how that screening system actually worked and you can't test against it, did it really match people correctly?
What's in the black box? I'm one of those people that have come out and I've gotten some heat for this. Like I'm a sourcer, I'm a sourcer by trade, but I think that pure sourcers and that pure sourcing function is going to be largely obsolete by 2025 when you look at the market and you see what you can do with the GPTs or what you can do with a pin.com, and what that means that people are going to have to be AI fluent recruiting operators. They're going to have to run full cycles with that leverage, with that curiosity.
Yep. So let's talk about beyond the stack. What are you seeing? Like when you go to conferences and you talk to other recruiters, where's the market today and where do you think it's going to be at the end of 2026?
Ooh,
Because it's 9 months and it seems every month is something brain churning.
what do I see? I think that high volume corporate recruiting teams that are like 12 people in 2025, they're going to be 4 people in 9 months. And what I think is going to happen is you're going to have those 4 people using AI to do what 12 people did before. I think that RPO firms are going to get crushed on margin because of the value prop is that they're going to say something like, we have warm bodies. I've seen this at conferences, right?
Yeah.
They talk about their data,
Warm bodies
right?
and
We have a process. Bullshit. This is going to be what AI is going to replace first. And also to that, generalist agency recruiters who are just taking every rec that they can get and spreading themselves out, they're going to discover their access to LinkedIn and their Boolean search skills. They're not differentiators anymore. They never really were, but now it is going to be undeniable. Okay. One of the reasons why I work up market in executive search is not just because executive search is going to be is going to survive, right? It is going to be an area where the stackless native operator is going to operate at scale, right?
Yep.
They're going to be able to run a full search cycle solo at a quality level that used to require a team. And it's going to bring individuals forward who have genuine domain expertise in a specific vertical. My team at the Rework Group, what we do is we work with companies to bring in engineering leaders, engineering leadership, right? It is that principal engineer, it is that software engineering manager who's a player coach, it's that director, it's that CTO. What we're doing is we're able to bring in our genuine expertise because of what I've seen through 20 years of doing this type of search. And we're not necessarily saying that we can charge less. We're saying, hey, we can do things at a better skill set because our output to cost ratio is generally better than a team. And that's going to fundamentally change executive search. I kind of frame this, the stackless era that I'm projecting.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't threaten specialized search. It validates it, right? So going
Yeah.
back to that corporate recruiting team where you, instead of having 12, you have 4, you may have one that focuses purely on GTM. You may have one that focuses purely on technical recruiting, right? It's not what gets automated. It's what gets more valuable.
Let me ask you this on a separate note. How do you
Okay.
think there are, like in retails and hospitality, if you think about restaurants and hotels, they're huge corporations often, but very decentralized recruiting. How do you see any of this AI and these tools affecting decentralized recruiting? My thought is maybe these companies are going to have to provide services from centralized some parts because they, in many cases, I hear them all the time, is they don't actually know if the managers are actually calling people back and they're complaining about that.
I think that Lee shared something the other day on Twitter about the fact that LinkedIn is moving towards more of an integrated ATS. It can do that call recording. It can do that tracking of those activities. I think that as recruiting becomes more decentralized and as more pressure is put on the hiring manager, not only to make the hire, but to govern the process, that the tooling will supplant them and keep track of them like a CRM keeps track of a salesperson.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, because I think, if you talk to, I have a lot of clients in the hospitality business, and most hotels are small. They're not all resorts. So even resorts don't hire unless they're really big. They don't have a workforce of 800 people all the time. They've got a workforce of 100 or 200. So that's not high volume. But if you look at all of Hilton's, there's a whole bunch of people, but it's totally decentralized. And this tech, really, I have some ideas of where it's going to support them, but it's those hiring managers on the individual side, like from screening to providing the support to those ones. That I think is going to be one change no one's really talked about it, I think.
So I think people are talking about it. I just don't think it's voices that are necessarily being heard. For instance, there was one young lady that I was having a conversation with that she thinks that LinkedIn has tapped out how many recruiters they can sell recruiting licenses to.
Yeah, I
I
think
was
that's been
like,
done for a while, except for now their agent. And we'll talk about that in a second too.
yeah, but the thing is that a different individual, Shannon Pritchett, said, look, they're going to have to sell to hiring managers. They're going to have to make that part of the core function of where things are at. And
Hmm.
then a third individual, Christine Welsh, who I was having a conversation with, she said, why is LinkedIn running commercials during the Today Show? And that stuck with me because I want to understand the philosophy of why they're showing hiring assistant as a commercial during the Today Show. Is that a better, is that somehow an audience that we have not tapped as a source of hires? Or would it be better to show that on Bloomberg? I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here.
That's a
What
very
that target
interesting point.
market is.
Yeah, very interesting point. Let's just say the old model for LinkedIn, and I'm hypothesizing this, is bullying people and individuals that new professional workers are on LinkedIn. They have a expensive LinkedIn recruiter license, and we know many of those don't even get used. And then you've got they were recruiters, but now you have Juicebox and Core, GoPerfect that are creating this quote unquote end-to-end staffing solution, if you will. And LinkedIn recruiters agent can tap in that similar market as well. So go right to the CRO, go right to the individual operations teams, the hiring managers, and sell directly to them, and they can keep high margins.
What I think you're talking about is pattern recognition, right? Like
Mhm.
honest market intelligence. I think that if you can convey to them that it's a network that's actually built in relationships, then it becomes the whole product. And I think LinkedIn is trying to do that. I think that the Brew 360 change to the algorithm
Yep.
has definitely, and for those of you who don't know what Brew 360 is, it is the propensity that your circle on LinkedIn, rather than it getting larger, is getting smaller and more concentrated. That's the quick of it. There was a gentleman who Hung Lee had on a Friday or so ago that really specialized in it. I'd recommend going back and pulling the Recruiting Brain Food newsletter so that you can understand where things get more valuable as everything around it just gets more commoditized. And that
Yep.
commoditization, you touched on several different sourcing tools, right? Sourcing has largely become commoditized, right? The markets, and by that, to your point about LinkedIn and LinkedIn rolling out all these innovations, are they innovations or is it a second mouse? Like second mouse, I think about it in terms of Apple. Apple didn't invent the iPhone, somebody else did. They didn't invite the App Store, BlackBerry did. Is that there's a systematic escalation of who is going to be in recruiting and what tech is going to be in recruiting, not the people, but the market for transactional recruiting is going to shrink by a third over the next 3 years, based on my thesis that you have 12 that's going to become four, right? Actually, that's two thirds. I'm sorry. But okay, so at least half. As these tools evolve, my question then becomes, does a Go Perfect or does a pin become more specialized? Do they provide different resources that LinkedIn doesn't provide so that people like me can have advisory search abilities and grow the value that I bring to Mr. Hiring Manager because these tools are foreign to them? Or is it such an environment where companies stop staffing internal TA teams and reduce their spend on LinkedIn because they've figured out a better way to make critical hires by leveraging those external resources, increasing their partner relationships with people as opposed to augmenting it with AI?
I think it's going to be interesting next 9 months as this stuff rolls out. Plus, the advances as we originally were talking about with Claude. Anyone can do so much more with Claude now. In fact, I'm going to probably write a post maybe before we do this called "I'm breaking up with ChatGPT" because I just canceled my entire company's all the licenses.
Oh, really? Wow, that's aggressive. Hold on. You just canceled all their licenses. You're running Claude,
Huh?
you're running ChatGPT. This
Yep.
goes back to my thesis that the tech stack is collapsing.
Yep. Because so we were using ChatGPT like most people. We understood the research. You could help write, but it couldn't tool, right? It couldn't do tasks very well. And then, quite honestly, the memory was just killing me. Like I'm just asking the same thing and it just couldn't get it. And then I got turned on because we have a huge project that's coming out, release. And my coders are like, oh, we got to get Claude. We got to start doing this. So we started doing it. And we're like, holy, this is 10X what we were doing before.
So you bring up the case that people had ChatGPT, they had Cursor, they had all these different myriads, and it all collapsed
Yep.
into Claude.
Yep.
My favorite.
All of our QA, everything.
Oh, I love the fact that I can be in Slack and talking to my team, but that I can go from Slack to Claude, never leaving Slack, and text message my wife on iMessage.
Yep. Unbelievable. And how long did it take you to set that up?
Actually, it probably took me like 6 minutes because I was so this goes back to the curiosity angle.
Yeah. Yes.
That
Yep.
if you are a curious, empathetic, tenacious, and mischievous recruiter, I think we can agree that Steve Levy indexes on that as well. Is that I'm going into Claude right now just so I can make sure that I'm doing it. Is that when you go into on your Mac, you have chat, cowork, and code. If you go into cowork, you can go into customize. If you go into customize, you have skills that you can customize and you have connectors. For instance, I've connected through the MCP, I've connected Apollo, and it's what I use to produce my call sheet. I say something like, show me 10 CTOs that are hiring in the Atlanta area or software engineering managers, bring me back their contact information. And it pulls back a list of 10 people, their phone numbers and email addresses. I don't have to leave Claude.
It's the first thing I go into every day. I don't open up my email. I go into Claude.
Yeah.
And ChatGPT was never like that. And we're still using OpenAI on the back end within our product, but we'll probably replace that too at some point.
As you talk about replacing it, this goes back to the comment that I made about the fact that at tech conferences, we're not going to have vendors selling end-to-end solutions. We're going to have people talking about how they can plug in their API.
Yeah. In fact, so those my next thought is maybe we should do another one of these, just screen share just what you talked about. But that's 3%. Let's talk about the 97% about let's open up Claude, show the 3 panels and show, okay, let's go in and see how you connect to get contact information. You don't have to go to another website, type in a name. Never. Those days are over. It's just get an API key to a tool that you know that works. And that's your forever for now.
You just described a $70 connection, right? Is that you get, I think 10,000 lookups a month or 5,000 lookups a month on Gemini, on Apollo, and you pay $20 a month to have the pro plan of Claude so you can add all these things to it. This is not like going out and buying a Mac Mini to run OpenClaw, right?
Yeah.
No disrespect to Tom Alessio, who runs a great recruiter hangout and talks about all these things on Friday afternoons. Just tinker, just be mischievous, man. If you spend the time being curious and mischievous, then you can focus your empathy on driving a better outcome, a better relationship with Mr. Client or Mr. Candidate. And that tenacity, don't stop when you think you've hit the limit. My dad of blessed memory would say, Brian, you got to do one more. So like when I was in agency land, it was 101 phone calls, right?
Yeah.
It's a mile and 1/10. It's something more that you've got to put out there into the ether, that tenacity.
Yeah. I listened to Anthony Robbins, and one thing he said is, if you think you're doing good, you're getting poor results. If you think you're doing excellent, you're getting good results. If you're doing outstanding, that's a difference maker.
I like the way you frame that. I like how you come to that conversation with that piece, measure your outcomes. And it's like Brian can remember Good to Great is written, who that's written by, and cite all these books that I can't think of Peter Drucker, right?
Yeah.
You manage what you inspect with KPIs.
Yep. Awesome. Hey, we'll do another one of these too, because I think.
Okay, great. I'd love to come back.
Yeah.
Back?
Oh, yeah. Because I think I want to get into share screens and share what people are doing, because I know I get a lot of corporate recruiters. There's CHROs that listen. There are VPs of talent that are listening. And I think that one thing about, I'd almost say like the mischievous How do you
Yeah.
recruit for that? Because I think that is probably the next skill set that Josh Bersin should be looking for when he talks about skills. That is the AI skill right now. And process automation is deceivious. How do you figure out a way to do this? And they don't have to be super technical. You're not a
No.
programmer. You need to know how to plug in an API, and Claude will tell you how to do it.
So one of the things that I think is ingenious about software engineers, and I talk to software managers all the time, right?
Yep.
Is that they want to know, how has somebody made things more efficient? How are they, and efficiency is akin to laziness, right? How
Mhm.
did you give back more of your time so you could do less of your job? That's what AI is about, right? Yeah.
It's going to break. So that's why you just can't, it's not a do it once. It's a mindset shift. That's why mischievous is so important, because just because the first time you do it and it worked, the next time you run it, there's variables that change. So
Oh, and then
it's
you've got to
gonna
be
can't
curious
change.
to solve for the variables. You've got to be resilient to go after those answers, right?
Yeah.
Like I said,
Yep.
the recruiter that is successful today is curious, empathetic, tenacious, and mischievous. The recruiter that is going to succeed 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 2 decades from now is going to have to embody those four things. And those
Yeah.
things will not be replaced by AI. They will be only be augmented by AI.
Oh, that's a great way to end it. Brian, how can people reach out to you and learn more? I'll put all those show notes in there about connecting on LinkedIn, but
You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Substack at Forward Motion. If you want, you can give me a call. My number is 867-5309. And you can reach out on LinkedIn. You can shoot me an email to Brian at the reworkgroup.com. I'm here to be helpful. I'm here to make sure that our community goes further, faster, and then we go from better to best.
awesome. Thank you so much. Great to have you on. And we'll reschedule another one, a screen share.
Awesome sauce. John, I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for making it a great day.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks for spending your time here with GoHire Talks and listening to our guests. My intention has always been to create incredible content to help you in your career in recruiting and marketing, business and leadership. We appreciate all of the insights and feedback you provide. If you've got guests you'd like us to have on the show, please let us know. Again, thank you for all your support.